all of the thoughts that run through your mind, they are not all true. So if you can develop a healthier relationship with your thoughts, and the way to do that is to start to see them objectively as separate than you, when you start to create a healthier relationship with your thoughts, then you can notice when different feelings pop up and you can check them so that they are not stealing your joy, or they are not overshadowing a healthier response to whatever you're currently experiencing.
Hello, and welcome to today's version of the Keynote Curators Podcast. My name is Seth Dechtman. I'm your host and the president of the Keynote Curators. Our guest today is Karen Allen. She is the founder of 100% Human and the author of Stop and Shift. Karen will share her story of how she overcame tragedy and was able to turn her life around. Her phrase is, "You can go to crazy town, but don't build a house there." It's a story of grit, overcoming obstacles, and how to have a growth mindset that's going to be able to transform any situation. We appreciate you being with us, and thank you for listening. You're going to be smarter for it. Hello and welcome to today's version of the Keynote Curators Podcast. We have a very special guest, Karen Allen. Thank you and welcome, Karen.
Thanks for having me, Seth. I'm excited to be here.
Likewise. I usually like to just kind of get right into the heart of the matter and dive into the deep end. I don't necessarily like to read bios. So if you could just share with our listeners who aren't familiar with your story, take us through the events, what you feel is important for right now, where you are and what's important to you that led you to where you are now.
Yes. Well, thank you for asking that, because what I'm doing today was not planned in any way, shape, or form. I did not know that I would be a speaker. I didn't know that I would be so obsessed with the human mind, but I am. And it did come through my own personal experience. So again, thank you for asking. My background is actually in human resources. So I was in recruiting and the talent development side. I really had a passion for helping people to find a career that they connected to and not just a job that they needed. And so at the time, this was about 10 years ago, I was working for a national home building company. My husband was a newly established CrossFit owner, and he kind of venturing out on this entrepreneur path. And he was so good at all things sports and athletics. He played basketball, and this actually became a pathway for him to help people tap into their own strength. And so while he was starting the business and, I'm doing my HR recruiting thing, we also had a beautifully blended family. So it was kind of like, when you see people run a relay race and they have to pass off the baton at the exact right time. Like that's what life felt like, because we were balancing and juggling a lot. But on one particular Monday, I was working on a position that I needed to do some interviews from home. And so we coordinated what we needed to do after to get the kids situated and settled. And so I picked up my son and my stepdaughter, and I went to do the interviews at home. And it was during my first interview that I noticed my cell phone was buzzing, and I was using a house phone. So hopefully listeners here know what a house phone is. I've been in rooms where some people don't.
Some may not.
So that's correct. That's correct. But that call changed my life forever. When I picked up the phone, I heard one of the members from our gym, and everything was chaotic. I heard her screaming. I heard people in the background, and I could only make out one word, and that word was shot. And so immediately my body responded. I tell people before my mind did, because I just started shaking because I didn't have all the information, but you can only imagine to get any kind of news and to hear that you're just in a complete panic. So I made my way to the gym. And one thing that was really interesting about this small time frame was I remember calling my boss to tell him, I had other interviews scheduled, and letting him know that I would not be able to do them because something happened at the gym. And his response stays with me to this day. He said, "Karen, I'm going to stay on the phone with you until you get to the gym." He didn't ask, "Oh, who's the candidate? Okay, what position is it for?" He did not go business mode.
Wow.
He was in just straight up human to human, heart to heart. How can I show up for you? Which at that time, yes. And at that time, I don't think we were talking enough about being human in the workplace. And today, I'm very fortunate that most leaders do consider the person behind the position. So that sticks out to me. So I made my way to the gym. And unfortunately, when I got there, it was chaotic because there were first responders there were police there. And ultimately what happened was somebody came to the gym where my husband was teaching his class. They walked in, they shot him. He died instantly.
Mm.
And he never saw it coming from my understanding from the police report. But everything did change at that point because I was only 29. To become a widow before you're 30 and really in this kind of way rocked every part of my life. And it actually created a ripple effect because after losing my husband, I lost my house, my car, my job. In 1 year, I felt like I was taken down to ground zero.
Yeah.
But from that place, because my son was 2 at the time, I started to fight for my life too, because I didn't know what direction to take. And I actually felt like I couldn't even take a step forward. And
Yeah.
so it was a few months after my husband died that I just realized every single thing that I do, even if I can only take it one breath at a time, everything I do is going to create a ripple effect beyond this moment. So, what do I want this ripple effect to be? And it started with managing the chaos in my mind. And I
Yeah.
didn't know it at the time, but I started to experience the benefits of mindfulness and positive psychology. And then over time, I learned the word neuroplasticity. And I was like, wait, what? This is a
Mm.
thing? And because it was such a mighty impact on my healing journey, I became passionate about sharing this with other people, letting them know that whatever lives in your mind today, whatever hurt, whatever pain, whatever adversity you are facing, that does not have to be the theme of your life. That does not have to be the narrative that you live from. And you can be more intentional. You can make more
Yep.
conscious decisions that will help you to grow through whatever you're going through. And through those studies and this new passion, I started to share a lot of different mental exercises, I call them. One in
Right.
particular is the one that I started doing innately, stop and shift. And today I'm sharing Stop and Shift with the world. It's a mental exercise that helped me to reframe my thoughts and build a thriving mind.
Which is your book that came out within the last 6 months.
Yes, yes.
Exciting. That's amazing. There's so much there. I can identify, I think if you're human and you have a pulse, you can identify with the story, whether it's the loss, the rebirth, the struggles, the overcoming the struggles, family, work life, mental fitness, physical fitness. There's so much there. You said you started in HR and it was for people, it sounded like it was more to help them find, it wasn't just a job, you said, right?
Hmm.
And I would take
Yes.
the case, and I'm going out on a limb here, that CrossFit, where your husband was, first of all, he was in the early days of CrossFit,
Hmm.
and that was a calling for him.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah. And I think
It
it,
just,
it came after playing basketball for so many years.
mm,
And he understood the body in a different way. I remember he was getting his personal training license and he did some studying and he went on and he took the test and aced it without years of
right,
studying, but it's because he was
right.
immersed in that world.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so the question came up, how can I help people to feel
Yep.
empowered? And he even had one woman who was in her late 70s and she came 5
Wow.
days a week. So he loved helping people tap into their strength and making it easy for them to appreciate, celebrate, and strengthen their body.
And in a way, the through line of that, whether you were helping people find their calling, because it's just not HR and it's just not a job, and he was pulled in by his past
Mhm.
experience with basketball and athletics, the through line continues through you.
Yes, yes,
And
yes,
having people step into a realm of possibility, a domain of transformation, it's quite
yes.
powerful. I have to tell you, before we got on the recording, I told you I've been immersed in all things Karen Allen for the last day,
Mm.
prepping and creating some questions and whatnot. And, everybody that you address in a keynote comes up to you and the most impactful feedback is about, when they say, I need to go hug my kid, or I need to go make amends with a work colleague or my neighbor, or whatever it is, that effect where the ripple has it. When I was 13, my father was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer and died days, very, very
Mm.
quickly. Like you have it and, not even a goodbye. And
Mhm.
my mother was 44 at the time, 4
Mhm.
kids, one in
Mhm.
college, one in high school, 2 in junior high school. And she was a travel agent working part-time. My dad was the main breadwinner, and we left our state, went to another state, and just a real upending. And at 13, I don't think I had the wherewithal to say, okay, I've hit ground zero. And I'm going to work on approach neuroplasticity and transform what's not working and where I feel powerless and where I'm not self-expressed. But I think, Karen, what I want, I'm leading up to a question here in a really long-winded way. What I want to hear from you is that people who aren't necessarily in tune or tied into the vernacular, the language, the distinctions of the science behind it, do innately or as a reaction, a flight or fight, a survival, they've had enough, the pain becomes too much, whatever it is, begin that path of expansion, of possibility. Can you talk to that, but with this kind of thing in mind, if you will? I'm giving you 20 million things to address here. Concepts are easy to talk about, but then when you bring it out onto the field of play, it's like, okay, my best laid plans on a basketball game, we're going to set up this play on an inbound, and then something happens and the play completely dissolves. I'm going to cherish every moment. I'm going to know that I have a ripple effect with every breath. But sometimes life happens. You get resigned, you get cynical, you get tired. There's that ebb and flow. I know I'm all over the place on this, but can you just talk to the humanness of that?
The humanness of being able to manage the ups and downs of life with a positive and healthy mindset?
While knowing intellectually that everything has a ripple effect. But sometimes, behavior isn't habituated so firmly, and there's still a behavior that's occurring that is not fomenting or providing the right nutrition, if you will, to move forward that area that might not be as powerful as you'd like it to be. Does that communicate?
Yes, absolutely. Well, first, we have to just acknowledge that we have learned more about the brain in the last 20 years than we've ever known before, ever in human existence. And what we've learned is that the brain is always changing, whether we want it to or not. Every single experience, every thought that we have is actually shaping our brain. So when I started to learn this, I was like, well, maybe I should shape it with some intention. Maybe I should be more thoughtful or more intentional about the thoughts that I'm allowing to reside in my mind, about the actions that I'm taking in life. A great way to think about this and to maybe simplify this a little bit is the way that we react. Now, if you were driving on a road and we'll say somebody cut you off, an immediate reaction is, what are you doing? You're offended. Maybe they almost got you into an accident. So rightfully so, it rubbed you the wrong way. But then you continue with that energy. You keep following them closer. Maybe you do something like cut them back off, or either way, the energy that you bring initially is a reactive energy. And what we need to learn to be better at is to create a pause so we can respond more intentionally. But the first reaction is just that. It's just a reaction. And so we can train our brain to respond more thoughtfully. And if we go back to that same scenario, somebody cuts you off on the road, and maybe your first reaction for the last 20, 30 years is to be upset, by taking a beat and just giving some thought. Well, maybe they're on their way to an emergency. Maybe they really just didn't see you and they didn't do it on purpose. And do I want to carry this anger or this frustration in with me into the next minute, the next hour, into the next room that I walk into? Here's what happens is when you start to notice your reactions to life, if you can take a beat and just notice them, then you put yourself back in the driver's seat of choosing how you want to respond to these moments in life. And it's changing your brain in a lot of different ways, but it's kind of like the neural pathways are created in our brain because of the thoughts and the patterns that we've created in our life. So we have some neural pathways that are like a 5-lane highway. You could rush down them because that has been your automatic response for however many decades. If you want to create a new response to life, if you want to create a new healthy habit, then it's going to take some time to not only create the new neural pathway, but to strengthen it. And so I'm going to bring this all back together for you. If you're in traffic and at first you notice that your reaction is that of anger, that's okay. What is the next thought that you have? What is the next response that you have? And by taking that time to be more considerate of your reaction and your response, you're actually creating a new neural pathway. Now, if you do this over time, what happens is you may have that initial human reaction. We're not judging that. What we're saying is, but then what do you actually put out in the world? And the more conscious you are about your reactions to life, the more you are strengthening those neural pathways that then become automatic. It's a rewiring process. But you may have a 5-lane highway right now on a pattern that you don't love so much. Don't worry. You can start creating new habits, new responses to life, new habits, even that you're implementing in your life. And the more that you do that, this is a very famous statement, those neurons are starting to fire together and they wire
Right.
together. And the
Right.
wiring is the new neural pathway
Yeah.
that becomes the new automatic response to whatever stressor or scenario that you could be encountering.
Yeah, and it's easier said than done, but if you can create that habit, that
Mhm.
tiny habit, as James Clear says, of taking
Yeah.
that beat, that pause, that moment, create that space, those neurons become fortified and then become that habit. You are what you think,
Mhm.
and it's a
Absolutely.
powerful, simple, almost cliche throwaway statement, but it really is. It really is that. Let's move on to the 100% human. Okay, you ready? So
This
this movement is all about embracing the quirks, the imperfections and the struggles that we all face in life, and choosing to grow from those experiences.
Mhm.
So, Karen, what differentiates some people and allows them to push through those hurdles to live
Mhm.
a more fulfilling life?
Mhm.
Are some people just born with it, or a more positive mindset, that is, or is it hard to get there if you weren't? Can you share a little bit about your thoughts on that?
Yes, yes. Well, first, what does it mean to be 100% human? It's just allowing yourself to be who you are and looking to expand and be more expansive, meaning that a lot of times we get caught in what we think life should be. We also get caught up in checking the boxes of what other people said we should do in our life because that's just what's expected of us. When really, as humans, we are limitless and possibilities are limitless within. So that's what it means to be 100% human, not to be perfect, but to be expansive. I think the problem is that we have had this desire, we aim for this like flawless existence, this problem free life, right? If you get the right job, if you marry the right
Right.
person, all those things, then you're going to have a perfect life. And that's just not the case. So
Yeah.
instead of aiming for a problem free life and creating this comfort zone where we think we're going to thrive and we're going to excel, instead, we need to create the mental skills. We need to build the tools so that we can overcome anything that life throws our way. So here's
Yeah.
my hope with the 100% human movement. It's that together we are sharing the tools and the skills so that we can be expansive and we can be limitless and we can continue to flow with life, even when something comes to disrupt that flow. It could be a global pandemic. It could be a child on your last good nerve. But either way, we're not trying to avoid the problems. We are learning how to grow with them. So that's what we're doing here in the community. And I think the biggest power in all of this is, yes, the power that we have within, but it's also the power of hearing one another's stories, which is why I wanted this community to really feel like a movement because we're sharing, how did I overcome this? How did I bounce back? How was I able to allow the tough emotions to flow through me? And by sharing again these skills, these strategies, and these tools, we have now been able to elevate our lives in a way that makes a positive impact on the people around us. Because personal development is very personal, right? It's about you and the uniqueness of who you are. But when
That's
you
right.
become better, you make the people around you better. And that's how you make the world a little better too. One of my favorite quotes from a book, Stephen Cope, The Great Work of Your Life, it says, you don't have to save the whole world. You just have to serve your corner of the world well. And I
Yeah.
believe when we are all 100% ourselves and we allow room for imperfection, and we also find new experiences that create this joy that invigorates us and gives us energy, it ripples out to the people around us and it inspires them to be better too. So that's the goal with this movement here.
That's really ambitious, aspirational, but it's so human. I don't know any other way to say it because well, it is. It's funny, and I'm not being, lighthearted or whimsical about it in any means. The personal development, the personal growth, the transformation, it is very personal, but it doesn't happen in a vacuum, right?
Right.
I mean, it just doesn't. Your growth and transformation doesn't exist only if you experience it. It has to have an occurrence in the world. You have to have an interaction in the world. Otherwise, it's kind of in a vacuum.
Yes.
And
yes.
it's limited at best. If not, I would take the case that it doesn't really exist unless others are aware of it. Not like, oh my God, hey, I transformed this part of my life. I'm making more money than I ever made, or I'm lost all this weight, or created this beautiful family. It's like, what is the way of being that caused you to have that breakthrough, and share that? Because I could be sharing about a breakthrough in my family, and you could be listening, and that could have a breakthrough in your health and well-being, an area that might not be working as well. So the power of that community is just so, I just see the vividness and the vitality of it. Really, really cool. I wanted to ask you, when you were talking about this life and the transformation of in this community and being human and 100% human, things come across: acceptance, non-judgment, all things that are human. We judge, we don't accept, we decline, we push away, we get isolated, we tolerate.
And if I may just add, it's not that we don't accept of others or judge of others. We do it to ourselves too.
Correct.
We don't accept ourselves, parts of ourselves, and we judge ourselves. Yes.
Totally. Yes. And I want to tie social media into that. I read a lot of books. I get a lot of books from keynote speakers. I read a lot of books with thought leaders, professors, and whether they're about society, about business practices, about personal interest stories. I am reading a lot currently about the impact of social media, the algorithms, the lowest common denominator behavior. And, I see it close to home in my family where, we're being sold a lifestyle, and what people really want is a life.
Yes.
So with that said, your thoughts on social media with being human and that perception of perfection. I think we could talk for days on this one.
We sure could, especially because I'm having this conversation with my preteen. And as he's not on social, and he won't be on social for many years. But he understands. I will tell you why this conversation came up. I use my social as a teaching platform. It's not a glimpse into all areas of my life. However, when I'm teaching, I do share many parts of my life. It's just that I've learned to become so present in every moment of my life. I'm not thinking about setting up a camera to capture the moment.
Right.
So I thankfully have created a very healthy boundary. But you're right. What happens is we get these glimpses of someone's life, and we see the picture, which very often is a static picture, but maybe it's a curated video, right? All of the right frames and the right snapshots. And what starts to happen is when we see this with other people, we're comparing the outside and what they're sharing with what's going on inside. And it's not that we do it on purpose, but unfortunately, it's just the way that our brain is wired. Until we rewire it and we can see someone else's vacation and feel genuinely just happy for them and not jealous that we're not on one ourselves. What's interesting, though, is we can feel two completely different things at the exact same time. We can feel happy for them and also a little bit envious that we're not on vacation as well. And that's why it's so important. And this is one of the things that I teach in my methodology, Stop and Shift, is all of the thoughts that run through your mind, they are not all true. So if you can develop a healthier relationship with your thoughts, and the way to do that is to start to see them objectively as separate than you. When you start to create a healthier relationship with your thoughts, then you can notice when different feelings pop up and you can check them so that they are not stealing your joy, or they are not overshadowing a healthier response to whatever you're currently experiencing. Again, when it comes to social media, it's a moment. It's a snapshot. It is not that person's entire life. And I do think that there are a lot of great thought leaders and creators who are sharing the messy parts of their life too. And what that does is it helps us all connect more deeply to say, hey, nobody's life is perfect. I love your content. This is a really great video, but I appreciate how you told me that you had a really tough couple of days. And I think there's a balance that needs to happen, certainly, but it's more work for the individual who's consuming it. That's where the work needs to be done.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's not completely on the creator. The creator wants to put their best foot forward. I thrive in trying to be excellent, right? I'm not trying to be perfect, but the work that I do, it is my goal that it is excellent because I want it to be helpful. So I think it's not just about the creator and what they're putting out there. And maybe they should, let their guard down. It's about us and how we are consuming the information and keeping a healthy mindset around the information we are consuming so that we can manage what's going on inside while also appreciating what other people are sharing with us.
Yeah. I mean, again, every response or every part of this dialogue is so rich. I've come across the phrase for decades now, we are meaning making machines. So when you say, every thought isn't true, most thoughts is meaning that we've added to something. We see something on social media and we make it mean something. They have a better life than me. I don't have this, and it generates what could be discontent and not 100% human.
Right. Because it's not 100% of the story.
That's
and we
right.
will never know 100% of someone's story. We only know what they share with us.
I know you have children. I have three daughters. I have three children. I have three daughters, and they're all at different stages. And I'm observing it, and I tell them, "You have no idea what's going on. You have no idea." But the famous phrase in the house is, "I always say you don't know who you're sitting next to because you're on a plane." And in the last 5 minutes when you land, somebody tells you, they're Albert Einstein or whatever. I mean, you have no idea who you're sitting next to. It reminds me of an episode, and I say this, I'm not trying to sound like aggrandized. We don't have TV in the house for a million reasons, but we do watch some streaming stuff. But I went through a period of watching the show Portlandia, which Portland, Oregon is famous where 20-somethings go to retire. And there's an episode where the young couple takes a trip to Paris, and they're all excited. So they're packing, and they take a shot of them packing with their passport and the airline tickets, and they post it on Facebook. They go and they check in, and they post it on Facebook. And it goes on and on. Well, the flight gets delayed. They miss their connection. By the time they get to Paris, they didn't hold the room because they were a no-show. It was raining. But if you go through the whole episode, the Facebook photos and the timeline is there's the Eiffel Tower. We're excited. We're on the plane drinking a glass of champagne and everything. And the irony is the humor, for me, I love this kind of humor. They're in bed when they finally get home. They're exhausted. They were lamenting about all the things they weren't able to do. And the spouses, they turn to each other and they says, I don't think everybody's having as good of a time as they're showing on Facebook. The line is much better written, but it was something like that. It's like, it's this lifestyle. It's this Instagram movie life. But, I'm harping on this a little bit. But it's you really want a life, like, go ahead.
Well, something comes up. I had a trip to San Diego for an event. My best friend lives out there. And so we decided we were just going to go with the flow. She lives by the beach. We were going to go for a walk. We were going to go out to eat. We were just going to kind of figure out the day as we wanted to.
Sounds great to me.
Sounds great. And thankfully, she and I have been very much like tracking on the same healing and growth journey, which is interesting and also a little like Freaky Friday. You're like, how is this happening? Where is this coming from? And so we were going with the flow. And there were points during our time together where something not so great happened. So we went out to eat. They said that it was going to be an hour and a half wait. And we were like, okay, well, we'll wait around, but we'll see if maybe another restaurant around the corner could take us, and we'll check online. And a few minutes passed and somebody walked up from a community table. So we didn't have to wait for a proper table to sit down. We could go sit there. So we could have been upset that it was going to be an hour and a half wait. We just kind of went with the flow and something opened up. We take this seat. It's very, very crowded because there had been a parade in the town. And as we're sitting there, somebody knocks over their drink. And so it
Mm,
falls onto my friend's foot and we're like, oh, it's okay, no big deal. And we kind of just let it go. And the person's super embarrassed. But then we enjoy our food. We're talking about how much we love the flavors. And then somebody next to me pours their drink all over me. I mean, they're like, I don't know, it
not
was a
just on
coffee
your foot,
martini or something,
all
right?
over you.
All over me. So I look like, I'm so sorry. I said, it's okay, no big deal. Well, at the end of this night, we were thinking about all of the things that were not great. She got something spilled on her. I got something spilled on me. It was just all of these different moments.
Right.
But it never once put a ripple, a dent in the joy that
Right.
we held throughout the day
Yeah.
because we were focusing on all the fun we were having, the delicious food, the jokes, the music. We saw the moments that were so good and rich and full of life. And because we were able to notice those and to allow those to really, fall on our heart as opposed
Right.
to letting the bad things that happen fall on our heart and put a dampen on our day. Life is all what you focus on. The good's going to
Right.
happen and the bad's going to happen. But where are you putting your focus and your energy?
Yeah.
And that is why training your brain is so important.
Yeah. A great share. Thank you. Because it's also like, how you relate to it is how it occurs. So if you
Yes.
relate to it like, oh my God, they ruined this, or now I have to dry clean or whatever, that's how it occurs. No problem. Because you're committed to really sharing time and connecting with your friend and
Yes.
whatever your more intention you had, sharing some recent struggles or growths or whatever, great. But really just being together, and that commitment overtook everything else that couldn't detour your commitment. It's
Yes.
really great anecdote. I want to take it further. I have a couple of very pointed questions. What is your favorite way to build mindfulness moments in your day, or mindful moments?
Yeah. Yeah. Being present, honestly, just it doesn't matter what I'm doing. And a great example of this is I did a podcast a couple of years ago. And even while I was on the conversation with the guest, I would be thinking about the dread of editing because I didn't want to
Mm.
have to go through it later.
Right.
Well, now I have a podcast and I have a production team. And so it's great. I can be fully present and allow
Yep.
myself to be fully present. And that's one
Yeah.
example of something that I take with me into all areas of life. When I'm tickling my son, when I'm eating soup, when I'm sitting in the sun, I make it a point to be very present. And of course,
Yeah.
I'm a planner. I like to think in the future of what I need to do. But once I figure out those details, I'm right back in the present moment.
Right.
And this came from when I was in the deepest, darkest parts of my grief, and I felt like I couldn't get out of the bed, or I felt like I couldn't cook a full meal, or I just didn't know what to do with myself. And it's because people would tell me, take it one day at a time. And for me, a day was too long. So I
Right.
had to take it one breath at a time. So I practiced taking one breath at a time years ago. And now that's how I live, which I think is why I am not on social media a lot because, again, I'm like, if I'm reading a book, I just want to enjoy my book. I don't want to
That's
pose for a
right.
picture and show you what I'm
That's
reading.
right.
I try
That's right.
very much just to be
Yeah.
in the moment. And
Yeah.
that is actually, I would say it has helped me to enjoy the moments for what they are and let the moments like a spilled drink on me not sit too long because I know that I don't want that to, again, bleed out to the rest of my day.
That's
So
right.
mindfulness for me, it's not just a practice, it truly is a way of life.
Yeah. And it's a muscle.
It is. It is.
It's a
Mhm.
muscle. I mean,
Yeah.
I like to think that one of the things that the tragedy, and again, it's apples to oranges, there's no comparative suffering here and it's not a competition. I mean, if what happened to your husband happened to my wife, I'd be calling you for coaching. One of the things with my father was that I had this muscle around survival, that I could get
Mhm.
through anything. It was also very interesting on an existential level now, having children and, a little bit more time on earth here, dealing with death, learning how to deal with it early in life and
Mhm.
how that kind of frames up context of, when I say it's not a big deal, I'm not trying to be like minimizing it. Most things
Right.
aren't, like, literally most things aren't a big deal, like
Mhm.
literally.
Mhm.
And, so that's been a fortune from the tragedy. But this other ability to like be like, it's never as bad as it seems, it's never as good as it seems. And when I
Mm.
watched your TED talk and when I read through the work that you've done, I just really, really connected with you, your message. And I've had the great fortune, Karen, to work with famous people, not famous people, great messages, average messages. Well, none of my speakers have average messages, but messages that might be more conventional or in the mainstream that everybody can relate to. I recently worked with a group called Freestyle Love Supreme. They're extraordinary. I don't know if you've ever heard of them.
Are you talking about the show?
Yeah. Well,
I went to see it.
Okay. Right. So we just did we're doing a handful of private corporate events with them, and it's very, very cool. So I'm there. I'm at the rehearsals. We're doing one-on-ones with people. Some want to go as far as doing beatboxing. Talk about, I'm connecting this to your work and your methodology, and you're 100% human, because I'm in my work and some of the stuff that I'm writing on my blog and that I want to share with clients who are into having leaders be mindful, having leaders be present. I'm looking to connect the through line with improv is a species of mindfulness.
Yes. Yeah.
And it's a vehicle to develop that muscle. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And as much as I have a list of questions on my screen here, and I've, reviewed them and edited them and everything, I'm looking at you and I'm being with you and dancing with you, right?
Yes.
It's not like, okay, question, this one's done, this one's done. In fact, I don't think I've even hit half of them. So there is a power to being present. And I think that I feel, not like I'm a pretty pedestrian thinker, honestly, but I feel that you're going to see improv, the tools and skills in that being introduced in a very intentional way in life to develop and expand our muscles around being present.
Yes. Well, I absolutely agree, because you have to be present to be able to respond to the moment. And I think, to be quite honest, that's kind of where leaders get in their own way, is because they may enter a conversation thinking they know what this person's going to say, they know what the problem's going to be, or they don't have time for it. So they're not even listening to what they're saying or what the problem is, because they're thinking about the next meeting that they have to hop into. Being present is a skill, absolutely. But the way that we develop that is through the muscle of awareness and mindfulness. This is one of the reasons I love mindfulness so much. There are countless exercises and practices that we can do to become more mindful, more aware, and more present. One that I actually just did, and it blew my mind. So I learned this from a coach, and his course is called the PQ course. It's Positive Intelligence. And so he taught us focusing on your fingertips. If you rub your fingertips together and you notice the ridges on your fingertips, that is a mindful practice that will give you the same benefits as meditation if you do it, even in short bursts throughout your days. Over a couple of weeks, they could look at brain scans and they could see a change in your brain. Rubbing your fingertips together. So I was fascinated by this.
I'm doing it right now.
Yeah. So I started practicing this, and I saw an extraordinary difference in my ability to focus. So I actually posted this on TikTok. I said, listen, there's this exercise that I learned in a coaching course. I'm going to share it with you all. It has nearly 1 million views now. And people were like,
wow.
But because what happened was we overcomplicate meditation. And I was this too. I thought I was doing it wrong. And this small gesture, and I can't tell you how many comments were like, I thought I was playing the world's smallest violin. Like, no, it's not that. It's not that. But it's a small mindful moment that helps to strengthen your focus on just the ridges of your fingertips, which then impacts the awareness muscle. And it does many things. You can use it. I saw a lot of people come back and comment, I use that to fall asleep. Why? Because it calmed your nervous system. Or I used it and I felt more alert. I felt like this fog was lifted. Everybody had different benefits, but the benefit that they received was that they were being present. And now, and if we practice that over time, now because you have a small exercise that you can do in short bursts, you are going to feel those benefits. But again, it comes back to being present, which improv is a great way. Meditation, going for a walk without your phone and just noticing the sun, rubbing your fingertips together, focusing on your belly while you're breathing. There's so many different ways that we can practice mindfulness. And that's why I am passionate about sharing these tools, because it doesn't have to be that complicated. There's simple ways that we can become more mindful and more present.
Right. And taking it back to the leaders that you talked about, they come in predisposed. They come in with like hearing what they already think they know.
They assume.
And
Mhm.
there's no empty space there.
Yeah.
Karen, I could talk with you forever. I think we're coming
Same,
closer
Seth.
to the end. We'd love to have you back at some point. We get to the part of our conversation where we do a kind of a rapid fire round. We call it 20 questions.
Mhm.
It's a working title where we're going to come up with something, curated questions, 20 curated questions, something like that. But are you ready?
I'm ready.
Okay, here we go. Let me get ready. What's the biggest lesson you learned from the events in your past?
Make the most of the moment you're in.
What's the most important lesson you want your son to learn?
Mm. Not everything in your mind is true.
What's your favorite way to relax when you're stressed?
Cuddling with my son. And actually we tickle, we cuddle, just
Ah,
being present with him
yeah,
and creating memories together.
yeah. There's nothing like that with
Yeah.
children. Just the pure possibility of
Yeah.
just being.
Yes.
It's fantastic.
Yeah.
What's your favorite way to reflect on the beauty of life?
Honestly, I did this morning. I dropped my son off at school, and on the drive, I noticed how gorgeous the sky was. So
Mm,
before I pulled into my driveway, I found an empty parking lot where there weren't any trees that were obstructing my view, and I watched the clouds float by, and I just
yeah,
kept my eyes on the blue and the white and then the sun that was gleaming through. It reminded me of how big this world is and
yeah.
how small our problems are.
It's awe-inspiring. I mean, I feel like so corny with my kids. I'll like stop and I'll be like, look at the light on the clouds.
You do that too, Seth.
Yeah, they're like sea poppy. Although one of the three is very much an artist, and she's like, "Yeah, I already saw that. It's amazing."
Yes, yes.
What's your favorite book?
Oh, The Alchemist. Absolutely. I'm actually getting ready to give that to my son for his birthday 'cause
Ah,
I wish
great.
I'd read that earlier in life.
Yeah, I read that one. It's a great one. Social media, friend or foe?
Oh, I ride the line on that one.
Okay, you ride the
I
line.
yeah, I found a healthy relationship with it by using it to be a teaching tool and not a timeline of my life.
Great answer. What do you follow on social media that does lift your spirits?
Oh, several things. I am very inspired, even though I will never do this, I'll be honest, by DIYers. Absolutely
Hmm.
love to see how they can create
Yeah,
something out of nothing. I also love to follow people who are very specifically teaching something that is positive. So it could be anything. It could be breath work. It could be exercise. It could even be them showing their joy of coloring or painting. But anything that shows a positive activity, I am following them.
yeah. It's just like when you lift the veil, right, and
Mhm.
you kind of get a real look into the how it works. What's the
Yes.
most interesting thing about you, Karen, that we wouldn't know or learn from reading your resume?
Oh, I've had this question before. I'm like, I don't really feel like I'm that interesting. Well, I lived in Japan for 5 years when I was younger. My dad was in the military, he served in the Air Force for 21 years,
Fascinating.
and yeah,
That's
I lived in
fascinating.
Okinawa, which is actually one of the blue zones, one of
Yeah,
the happiest places on earth, and
yeah.
I lived there at a very young age that when we moved back to the States, I actually said to my parents, I was like, "When are we going home? I don't know what we're
Ah,
doing here, but when are" I definitely thought that I was, from Japan.
okay, let's keep this one short because I know you could go on and on about it. What's the biggest takeaway from your new book, Stop and Shift?
Oh, the power of choice. You get to
Mm,
choose what is in your mind,
yeah.
and the first thought you don't have to hold on to. You can reframe it.
Yeah, choosing just it's I could do a whole podcast on that personally. I'd love
We
to have
could
you
have
back
that
for that.
conversation for hours.
Yeah, so sometimes I'm not a dictator, but I try to say to my kids, sometimes there's no reasons for the choice you make. You choose because you choose, you know?
Yeah.
It's a very heady conversation for me. We'll come back to that one on our next interview.
Yes.
What's wrong with the world today?
Mm. Not enough love
Mm,
and kindness in
yeah.
everyday interactions.
Stevie Wonder, what the world needs now
Mm.
is love.
Can you imagine if we led
Yeah.
with love in all of our interactions?
Yeah. Or is that Burt Bacharach? What's right with the world today?
Progress. There are a lot of people who are willing to look at how we've lived and admit that we can do better and are working towards that.
Who do you look up to?
I look up to many people. I would say my dad. He has a neurological disease that started to impact his life when he was 38 years old.
Mm.
And he always says, "I'm not complaining, I'm just explaining." And I appreciate that.
What's something that you like to do but you suck at?
Play the guitar. I actually have one behind me. It's meant to be a growth mindset activity, and I am absolutely terrible, but it brings me so much joy. I am determined to learn a full song.
Yeah. I'm with you on that. Mine's been decades going, and it's a slow burn. What's something it's bad for you, but you have a hard time giving it up?
Baked goods, that's easy. Anything, brownies, cookies. I'm not a candy or an ice cream person, but if you put a donut in front of me, I'm going to ask, do we have a dozen?
Blueberry muffin?
Yes, all of it.
What's the most beautiful thing in the world you can think of?
A sunset. Yeah, the way that it just paints the sky, it fills me up with so much joy to see that kind of beauty. I don't think it can ever be captured in a painting, a drawing, or even a photo.
Or language.
True. Yeah.
All right, we'll leave on that note. Last question, self-serving. How am I as an interviewer?
You're great. Oh, it feels like we're actually in the same room. I wish that I could do my interviews in the same room and have more conversation. But thank you so much for inviting me into this space. And I appreciate that we were able to talk on a lot of different topics. And I think there's more for us to discuss together next time.
Yes, for sure. If you'd like to learn more about this speaker, visit our website at 𝘊𝐷𝘦𝑒curators.com. There you'll find dozens of videos of speakers that are a perfect fit for your event. If you'd like to reach out directly, please click on the link below in the description. My name is Seth Dechtman, and you've been watching Curated Insights.